I noticed that there's this division in the horse world. And it really does mirror the rest of the world. Why are we so divided? And why do we have so many segments when good riding is good riding? And most people do not need a hunter jumper program or an eventing program or a dressage specific program until they are further along. And so worked to build more of an inclusive, foundational, based in good biomechanics, good modern teaching styles program so that everybody could have a place to ride together. And that's my ultimate goal, is to be able to take anything that I do and be able to adapt to the individual, to the horse that comes in the arena, and really build this culture of individualization with a strong foundation of our understanding of classical riding and neuroscience for both the horse and the human.
Hey horse fiends, welcome back to another episode of the Thinking Horse and Rider podcast. Today I'm sitting down with instructor and biomechanics coach Teresa Pilegaard to talk about why so many riders feel overfaced, overtaught, and undersupported, and how shifting to a true partnership model changes everything for horses and the human. Teresa is a certified therapeutic riding instructor and a biomechanics coach specializing in rider pelvis and spinal mechanics. She runs Dorato performance horses in Hume, Virginia, and also founded North Star Stables Nova, a 501c3 nonprofit organization supporting therapeutic riding access for all and supporting riding instructor education. Her work blends classical dressage, neuroscience, and liberty principles to improve outcomes for both horse and rider. So what are you waiting for? Come ride with us. Welcome, Teresa. It's great to have you on the show. We can tell from your bio that you specialize in rider biomechanics and therapeutic riding, but tell me a little bit more about why you do what you do and what your goal as an instructor is.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I got back into the riding world as an adult really because I saw a big hole in disability advocacy, disability activities, and independence. And my son at the time was unable to walk. He didn't walk until he was 7, and I kept being told, you've got to get him back on a horse. And so I did kind of the crazy thing. Instead of putting him in therapeutic riding, I decided to get my certification and do it myself. And as I did, I noticed that there's this division in the horse world. And it really does mirror the rest of the world. And it's very segmented, not just in disability riding, so therapeutic riding, adaptive riding, anything for people that need a little extra support in the saddle, and then quote unquote typical riding, which I hate the vocabulary we have. We don't have great terms for all of that. But that led me to a bigger problem of why are we so divided, and why do we have so many segments when good riding is good riding? And that most people do not need a hunter jumper program or an eventing program or a dressage specific program until they are further along. And so worked to build more of an inclusive, foundational, based in good biomechanics, good modern teaching styles program so that everybody could have a place to ride together. And that's my ultimate goal, is to be able to take anything that I do and be able to adapt to the individual, to the horse that comes in the arena, and really build this culture of individualization with a strong foundation of our understanding of classical riding and neuroscience for both the horse and the human.
I think that's so true, that we're so divided, and it doesn't really need to be that way. I feel like what happens when people get in a specific program is that they often get pushed past their comfort. I don't even know if it's comfort level so much as their experience level. Like sometimes it is the rider comfort, but they're doing things that they think they should be doing because it's in a dressage test. But if you're not balanced enough to do the thing, then now the trainer's just trying to get you through that thing, and then I think it develops a lot of bad habits and a lot of guarding in the riders. Like when you talk about neuroscience, they're needing to save their life. Their brain is in the save my life mode because I might fall off at the canter or whatever. And so that's the first thing your brain is ever going to deal with. And so now they've developed habits that are just about saving their life at the canter and not about actually riding the canter. So then when they realize I have a problem, now you have to undo all these layers of I need to save my life before they can get back to that place where they can comfortably canter again. And if people were just taught a basic level of riding and then also treating the horse as an individual, how that's important, then you can go and do anything you want to do. But that's not the way that we do it. So,
Right. We're so concrete progress oriented. We have to see the score or the ribbon, and we have to be moving up the levels. And that is the downside to the show barn as a beginning riding program as well, is that there's this pressure. And I've been there, I've felt it. I'm still rewiring my own brain from that environment. There's this pressure that in order to prove that you know what you're doing, you have to go out and show. And that to be making progress, you have to be moving up the levels. And there's no reason that we have to focus on that as our goals. We have so many things that are major accomplishments that we have in our daily work with our horses that don't get celebrated. And I think people need that affirmation. And so if we as coaches are not helping the rider to see those wins and to see that daily progress, then they are going to go seek that affirmation somewhere. And a lot of times that ends up being in the show ring. And a lot of trainers, coaches are pushing people too fast through the show ring. And I don't know when we got away from the rule that you show a level down from what you're schooling at home. I
right.
don't know when that happened, but it definitely causes quite some danger in the warm-up ring. And even just, do you know your basic ring rules? Do you know how to handle your horse in new situations that might be difficult for both of you? I mean, I've stopped going to certain places with my students because adults were riding with my 7 and 8 year old students and running them over as my kiddos were calling where they were going and observing the ring rolls. And these are, second, third level riders running kids over. And, it just kind of leaves you scratching your head going, yeah, so what's foundationally wrong here? Why did we move to discipline specific riding programs instead of tailored approaches that are built on a strong foundation?
Right. I think that's that's so funny because from running a USCF recognized horse show, I can tell you that many times it is the higher the level, the worse a person's warm-up etiquette is. And I think that especially among the amateur riders, the main issue is that they are trying to save their life. So they're not focused on the warm-up area. They're focused on what they're trying to do. And so they can't think about that many things, right? So, but I see that a lot. And I mean, I've had the same issue riding myself. And I know, because I've been doing it for so long, that, okay, I can pick out the people that are going to be a problem and stay away. But, for kids, that's a different thing. And I really think it just goes back to that brain capacity. They're trying to save their life. They're overfaced, whether it's in skill level or just in the mental aspect of what is happening, because sometimes the warm-up arena can be really crazy. And if you're not prepared for that, or if your horse is not prepared for that, it can cause you a lot of angst. And then you get locked in and you're not worried about what's going on around you. Totally agree that we should have individualized programs for horses and humans and not just these cookie cutter in the show barn. And the bio that you sent to me, I really loved the last line where it said, your hope for the horse world is that we move toward a coaching model where horse and human are empowered as individuals and partners. And we've talked a little bit about this before, and that was exactly why I wanted you here today, because I feel the same way. But what I want to hear is, what does that vision mean to you?
It's a great question. I think first and foremost, what I think it's really important for people to know is that we've all been where they are right now. We're all doing what we are doing because we have experienced the frustration and the disappointment and the am I good enough? Should I just hang up my boots of being stuck? And that there are very few places when people hit those walls. And I know that it's a very frustrating journey. I've had 2 C-sections. My last one was incredibly challenging. I was very fit going into it, but it took me, well, she's almost 7. It probably took me 6 years to feel like I could really ride again. And during that time, I sought out many different people, trying to find someone who could tell me why my body wasn't doing what I wanted it to do anymore. And that was a very difficult journey. And I think I'm finally reaching that point where I don't see myself as a post C-section person anymore. Like, that's no longer part of my identity. But that's because I finally have found the right people to help me understand. And I don't feel that scar tugging me the way that it used to. And so we've all been there. We're all on this journey, and we want to make it easier so that people don't have to struggle for 6 years in the future. What I hope is that we can take the pieces of modern teaching, the new research, the new teaching styles, and apply it to what we do in the ring. Because one of the things that is not at all strong in our industry is our ability to teach. We have so many platitudes that we say that might mean absolutely nothing to it might mean something entirely different to them than it means to us. And I've seen clinicians where, we've probably all ridden in situations where they say the same thing. And I'm like, does it look like I'm getting any better? They don't necessarily give you the space to advocate for yourself and say, hey, I don't really understand that. Could you help me? And I think we've all also been in situations where we've tried to ask a question and they've basically just said either you feel it or you don't. And if you don't, you shouldn't be riding. You can't teach feel. You just need to work harder. Go out and do it again. All of this flies in the face of what we know about how we learn. It's insane to me that we are still so behind on how to coach and how to teach. And that's what needs to change. And so, adding in really strong understanding of how the horse's brain works, but especially how the rider's brain works, how those two work together. That's really step one. And being able as a coach to have a massive tool belt of things to go to when somebody is struggling, having the humility to say, hey, I don't know everything. If this isn't working for you, tell me. Let's try something different. To be able to do what I know you're passionate about, to teach people, how do you reason through these things? How do you take these tools and apply them when you're not with me? We're trying to build a system that is flexible, individualized, that can be perpetuated by the rider in other situations. And that's what I'm hoping to see. And as I delve deeper into all of these different areas that I'm interested in, the connections get stronger. And I see how, okay, this area does this, and that connects really well to this, and that connects really well to this. But all of it is about building self-advocacy, self-efficacy for the rider, for themselves in their partnership with the horse, and providing an environment that allows them to feel safe to do that.
Yes, because I think that is one of the huge things that we're missing. And people all the time talk about how they've been cut off in lessons, clinics, whatever, just do the thing. And then they get afraid to advocate for themselves or for their horse. And I think that's wrong. Like, I don't know why people teach like that. I don't understand that mentality because then nobody's learning anything. And you're not helping the horse in that situation either. So now you've got a horse and a rider that are struggling. And I always feel like if I can't help somebody with something, then we're going to go look for who might be able to help us together rather than, or if I really know somebody who can help with that problem, then I say, oh, check this person out, or, let's give them a call and see if they can help us, because it doesn't do me any good to be trying to sort of fake help somebody when I know that I'm stuck, right?
Why
And
shy
and
away?
there's so much ego, right, in the whole industry, and then there's also fear about, well, if I say to this person, maybe you should connect with this person, then I'm going to lose a client, and then I'm losing money, and so there's a lot of layers to that. But I also think when people know that about you, it doesn't they're not jumping ship all the time into another instructor. They're always sort of coming back to their home, and then you're not losing clients. But
Yes.
it's
And
probably a whole nother episode.
it is a whole nother episode because you're right. It's how do we build this collaboration in the industry for the sake of the horse and the rider? Because that's what it's about. And everybody does have financial pressures, and we all understand that money drives this sport. Um, but we have to reframe that narrative. I agree with you.
Yeah. And so interesting because I did not know that you had two C-sections as well, because I did too.
Oh, really?
I did. And I actually had, luckily, a very, I guess I say good experience um, with them both. But it's a thing to learn. And I'm still, I would say I'm still not, like, my core and abdominal area is still not what it used to be, right? And part of that is aging, but then also, having all of that cut. But my recovery and all of that I thought went really well. And it was so funny the first time, after my first one, I thought I was going to get on my retired horse and I was just going to go, like, I'm just going to walk him around bareback. You know, and I went to get on and realized that I could not jump. Like, I couldn't boost myself up. And of course, I'm short. So I'm like, so I had to go over to the fence so I could, be level with his back and then swing my leg over. And then I realized when I went to get off, well, now I have the same problem.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that is a whole thing that nobody ever talks about. Nobody ever tells you. You just don't think about it. And funnily enough, my background is in sports medicine. I studied athletic training, but, most athletes aren't out having C-sections, so it's not something that we're talking when you're talking about college and high school athletes for the most part. So, yeah, it was a whole new learning curve on what to do and how to retrain those muscles. And again, I was lucky that I have the background that I have and I knew where to look for that help, but not everybody does.
Absolutely. And everybody has such a different experience because I love that you said that about the recovery because my second C-section was a much better recovery than the first. And it's because I was stronger, I was fitter. And then I got back in the saddle. And then I started some of my certifications and they asked for media of rides. And I started looking at myself and going, "Oh, that's not what it feels like when I'm riding, but that's horrible." And
Oh no.
by horrible, I just meant that I was like crescent moon crooked.
Mm,
Couldn't tell. And I realized later it was because I got sewn up on the left side of my body much tighter than the right, and
mm,
much more scar tissue on that side. So it was actually pulling everything toward my left hip. My right shoulder was collapsing, and my right rib cage was collapsing, and of course, changing my seat bones then. And it was quite a journey. I did end up doing some shockwave therapy on the scar tissue for about a year, and that helped get a little bit more balance back through that area. But then it was a whole lot of body work for myself, and then functional movement for myself to be able
mhm,
to find that again. But then when you've been stuck in that for 6 years, um, there's a whole host of mental things that come with that too. And that's where the biomechanics programs that I've been going through not only have been amazing for my coaching, but have completely changed the way that I think about myself, the way that I coach myself, and the ability for my proprioception to work at a higher capacity so that I'm able to um, fire the muscles I need to when I need them and then let them go when it's not the appropriate time for them to be working for me. And it's a journey, it's never going to be perfect, but the amount of improvement in even the last 6 to 9 months for myself has been astronomical simply because of the reframing within my own brain.
yes, it's amazing how the brain is such a big part of the writing journey, and most programs don't even address that, right? It's all about your physical abilities, your techniques. If there's anything mentioned about training your brain, it's about, just get over it and do it, be confident, face your fear, whatever those phrases that we've all heard are. And they don't help. They don't
No, I
They
think
don't teach people what they need to know. And then the other part of that is that from a teaching perspective, what kills me, and this is true across the board for adult learners, it doesn't matter if it's in the horse world or if it's in any other aspect, is that we know this when we have kids, when you have little kids, you know how important play is to their brain and how they learn so many things from play. When we get to adulthood, or even I would say late teenagerhood, right? Everybody forgets. There's no fun, there's no play, there's no nothing. It's get on and do the things that you need to do. And the horse and the human both learn better through play and through that lightness and having fun than we do in just being told what to do.
I love the posts you've been putting out on that because it's really true and it's a really important reminder for all of us to not just ride circles in the ring. And I think there's a resurgence now of people who are trying to have fun, but maybe not enough. I think
Right.
we need to have more fun because you're right. When we're told you just have to be confident, you just have to face your fear, then we get in this cycle in our head of, well, why am I not confident? Why am I not facing my fear? And it spirals and it becomes negative instead of, I don't know if it's intended in the first place to be positive, but it definitely doesn't end up being positive. And we have so many perfectionists, going back to your recovering from perfectionism thing. Hey, I'm right there. Um, that telling people to do those things is going to make the situation worse. So we have actually come up with a rule in my ring that if you try something, if I say, okay, let's try this, let's do it this way, and you go try something and it doesn't work in 6 strides, you have to stop and do something different. I don't really care what it is, as long as it's not abusing my horse. Do something different. Because if we white knuckle it, which of course people are so prone to do, we are building a culture of, well, you just have to work harder. You just have to do it harder. And that's what leads to abuse of people and horses. And that's what leads to losing our fun. And really, if you look at all of the highly, highly experienced professionals in our industry, every single one of them that I have respected and read at some point says this is all an experiment. We can have systems, we can know what we're doing, and guess what? It might not turn out the way that we think it's going to. And so we have to say, all right, well, that didn't work. Let's try something different. This is a science experiment. And that's what we have tried to reframe here is this is an experiment for us, for the horse, for us together. And if it's not working, we've got to do something different. And eventually, especially with my little perfectionist, because kids are so prone, they want to please, they want to work hard. They're so prone to want to just work it through, work harder. And that's where we get the pulling on the mouth. That's where we lose the seat. That's where the fear comes in because all those other things go out the window. And so as they are able to start thinking about it and go, okay, that didn't work. It's been 6 steps. Let me stop and try something different. Then eventually the challenge gets harder. Okay, what about in 4 steps now? Change something. And so we just try to build that idea of, okay, that didn't work. There's a reason it didn't work. It's okay that it didn't work. Let's do something different and see if that works.
Hey, horse fiends, while I've got you, if this conversation is hitting home, my program, Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart, is exactly where you need to be. It's the place where any rider who feels unsupported, or a little too perfectionist, or maybe just unsure of where to go next, can finally get the tools, the support, and the confidence to understand their horse and themselves on a whole new level. You get immediate access to 8 modules at your own pace, live monthly Q&A calls, weekly office hours with me, and a community of riders just like you. So if you're ready to stop white knuckling, wondering, or overthinking your rides and start building a real partnership with your horse, jump in now. Doors are open. I'd love to have you. And we have a special price going until the end of this year, until the end of 2025. So get in now. We can't wait to see you there. I love that rule because I often tell people do something for, X 3 strides even, and then stop. And especially with adults, what I find is that they actually cannot do it for a limited amount of time. Like I'll tell them 3 and it'll be at least 6, probably more than that, when they finally realize, oh crap, it's not working. I have to stop. Because they're so in this mode of I got to do it, I got to do it, I got to do it. And by the time they've thought that, they've already been 6 strides. And then they're like, and they get so wrapped up in I have to, I have to, I have to, they forget that I told them to stop. And so I love that rule. That's awesome. Which also brings us to people being taught that the horse has to be obedient, just like the rider, right? The horse has to be obedient. They must do what I want. And I feel like that really quashes the whole idea of having a partnership with your horse and this sort of almost mystical feeling that most people get into riding for, which is like being one with the horse. And when you're taught this obedience model, then you're never going to have that. So how do you address that while you're still trying to keep with teaching the riders correct biomechanics?
Yeah, it's a little different depending on whether somebody is coming here on my horses and riding or if they're bringing their own. Um, and I'm sure you've had the experience of people getting the first horse and thinking it is going to be that, mystical partner, and then having the, oh crap, this is really hard moments. And so I've had a couple of those in the last couple of years where we have had to have some hard discussions about what it means to be a steward of our horses and what the journey and the commitment looks like. Because even if you prepare people well and say, okay, so what kind of horse do you want? How many days a week are you going to be able to work with it? How much time? That sort of thing. Getting the horse is an entirely different story, and actually doing that is an entirely different story. And seeing the effects of doing the work or not doing the work is what really hits home to people. And so I do set standards. And I have had some situations where I have quote unquote grounded some people. It's been situations where I've said, hey, this horse is not safe right now because it's not getting what it needs, or there's a medical thing going on, or whatever it is. But this is why, this is what I'm seeing, and this is what I think should be done. And for now, we can work from the ground to help support the horse and to help build that partnership so that you can observe your horse, what the horse is saying, adjust appropriately, and then take that home and continue that at home. And I've seen some really incredible partnerships build when I've had those hard conversations, because it was that turning point where they said, all right, we have got to dig deeper and we've got to make a deeper commitment to this. And it is incredible what people rise to when you give them that boundary / pep talk, because it doesn't have to be negative. And I think that's what makes me really sad in the horse world is we're all going to have a situation where we're overfaced. And are we going to have someone in our life that can say, yeah, you're overfaced right now, I'm going to be honest, but here is how we can get past that. And I'm here to walk that with you. This is nobody's fault this is a part of the journey. Let's make a plan together. And so that's usually what I do. And, I check in when they come weekly. Okay, so what have you worked on? Why don't you show me what your warm up looks like at home? And wow, it's incredible. I just had a kiddo that's been working so hard with the pony he got about a year and a half ago. And the pony's been through a lot, and there was a lot that we needed to do to help the pony physically. And they just had their first canter the other day, and I almost cried. I mean, it was incredible to watch what they have built. So I am very aware of what my boundaries are. I think we all have to constantly evaluate them and make sure that we're holding ourselves to them. But, standing by them and saying, this is the why behind it. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what I can do to help is always my first step. So when I have people coming with their own horses, I do have to recognize that the horse is not in my care. I'm not going to try to sell them a whole bunch of things, but I am going to give them very practical ways to help themselves and help their horse, and kind of a program to work through within their budget. And we're very holistic in the way that we approach it. So, okay, let's use surefoot pads because the horse is getting a little bit stuck when we're tacking. There's some trigger here. Can we get the trigger to unwind while they're on the pads? Teaching proper lunging. We do groundwork with the rider themselves so that they can work on how they're moving their own body. So really assessing from all angles. Even sometimes it's, as a horse handler, can you walk a straight line? Does your body move in that way? Is a really important question to ask. And I did have a student that maybe had an injury. We all fall. We all have things going on in our life outside of horses. We get injuries. And was walking on the inside of his left foot. And so couldn't walk a straight line. And so I was watching the horse as he's leading him, and I'm like, the horse isn't walking a straight line. And then I watched him, and I'm like, oh, he's not walking a straight line. So the horse can't walk a straight line. So it's a lot of awareness and observation is kind of the foundation of everything we do. And I will admit that I have come to a point where I prefer having people come and learning on my own horses because I do have the control. I can get the body work for the horse. I can do the training in between. I know that the horse is ready to do the job. And I know that my horse is not shut down, that they're open to partnership, and that it can be a two-way street of communication. So it's a lot easier to build that partnership, that observation, when it's with my own horse. So it's a challenge when people come in with their own for me to work through both sides of the equation. But I've also had situations where I've said, why don't we see if we can also add in, even if it's just one lesson a month on my horses, so that we can learn those observation skills from a horse that's engaged. And the reality is the majority of horses are shut down. They have been told, like you said, to just do and be obedient. The horse doesn't know how to think. The horse doesn't know how to communicate. And they, going back to the fear, are mostly doing out of fear. And that's not a partner. At least that's not a partner I would want to have in my human relationships. Why would I want to have
Right.
that in a horse relationship, And so that's been a journey for me over the last couple of years too, is really delving deeper into that aspect of why are the horses scared? How can we start on the ground, building that relationship? And so when people come and they're working with my horses, we always start with groundwork. Okay, can you see, does the horse even have its eye on you? Where are the ears? Do you feel like the horse is heavy in your hand? Is the horse going to shift when you shift? And that's really the foundation of everything partnership-wise, and the foundation of understanding aids in the saddle. Because if we don't understand from the ground, when we shift, the horse shifts. how do we use our seed aids? And so I do think that the loss of groundwork has been a really big death knell for partnership in our industry, death knell for partnership in our industry. And I think we're having a little bit of a resurgence, which is great. But we have to presume competence in the people that come to us, especially the kids, because most people are like, kids don't want to learn this. Kids can't learn this. Kids pick it up way faster even than the adults do. And when we have situations where the horse isn't doing what we want them to do, especially that, they've got to do it right when we say we're going to do it. Well, why? Go back to thinking. Like,
Right.
are they not? Are they falling over their inside shoulder and they physically can't get their hind end underneath them? Are we giving a miscue and pulling on our rein in this specific way? And hey, that rein actually affects the horse this way, and you're asking the horse to do this. And it's an incredible thing that goes outside of horses. What are the skills that we're building for life that we get through these partnerships? And I don't know that I don't want a robot kid, and of course,
Right.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
want my kid flagrantly going around doing bad things either, but we have to find that middle balance of observing and listening and going, okay, well, why is this happening? What do I need to change? That has been such a humbling thing for myself as a trainer and a coach when a person or a horse does something and I have to go, well, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do better? That is not a natural thing for me. I have to work very hard at that. The horses are a very good, humbling thing for myself. But that's what we need to be thinking and teaching and coming back to is let me observe. Let me think about the why. Let me think about what I can do better. And not only is that a gift to our partnership with our horses, but to every area of our.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I find that people that really start to embrace that with the horses, it changes other aspects of their lives too. It doesn't just become about the horses. And I think when you talk about most horses are shut down, yes, because of fear and also that their needs are not being met. And I think it really does parallel with the human world because we have the same problem, like with mental health and even physical ailments in humans. We know now that sitting at a desk chair for, 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever it is not healthy. We know this, but we still do it. We still but then we just want a pill for all of the health problems that causes in humans, right? And so if you have a horse that is in a boarding barn or a training barn that's in the stall most of the time, doesn't have friends, is limited on their food intake, all these things, like their needs are not getting met. So now we always think of fear as being that overt thing that I'm afraid of, right? Like the boogeyman or, for a horse, the plastic bag or the whatever. But there's fear of, I know because horses live in their bodies, right? I know that I don't feel well. So I know that I need more food, but I can't get it. I know that I need this. And so now I have this little fear, this little brain gremlin, if that's what you want to call it, like inside all the time going, something's not right, something's not right. And now this human wants me to, do the things. And I'm just focused on the fact that I'm dying here, basically. And most people that have grown up in a lesson plan, a lesson, type situation, barn, whatever, they don't understand. They're not taught those horse care things. They're not taught about, and there's been so much since I started riding when I was 8 years old. There's been so many studies and so much research done on actual, horse health that we didn't have before. And but there's a lot of tradition that is not allowing people to go, oh yeah, hey, that was studied and that is true.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yes, educating and having those boundaries of saying, hey, I think this is happening with your horse and we need to fix it first is so important. And again, goes back to what we talked about in the beginning of people being afraid of losing clients and the money and the right. And yeah.
Because stall board's going to be more expensive than field board. And
Hmm.
I do think that's where a lot of the hang up is there. And these are not my words, but I love these words. When I went to the clinic with Dr. Peters over the summer, he called stalls sensory deprivation. And
Yeah, they are. They're big sensory deprivation chambers. And most of them are made so that horses can't interact,
yes, yes,
right?
we're so worried about them getting hurt
Yes, it's a fear. Yes.
daily, right?
Hmm.
By well, and I understand it because all my horses live out and they will come in with lumps and bumps. And one of my horses it was out for 8 weeks, and that's hard. But their mental health, as they have grown, because a lot of them are off the track thoroughbreds that are used to being stalled, it's incredible how much they have changed and opened up and helped one another and enjoyed the environment that they're in. And I love what you're saying about the norm of the barn, because I didn't really think back to my own experiences growing up and riding. And that was the norm. You come in, your horse is in your stall, and you tack and you go out and you put the horse back in the stall. And so you think, oh, well, this is what a horse does. A horse lives in a stall. This is the norm. Um, and it wasn't until I was maybe late middle school, early high school that I went somewhere where the horses lived out. And that was completely different than the prior experiences. And even coming back to horses, um, this idea that, oh, if it's in the 90s, they need to be in their stalls with a fan. And, oh, in the winter, we bring them in overnight. But how many horses actually need that? There are going to be rare occasions. Last year, I think there were a few nights where it got so cold and our 28-year-old ponies stayed in because we wanted to make sure they were drinking and eating and had, unfettered access to all the things they needed. But that was a rare occasion. And yeah, we're really asking our horses to do these things that are scary for them, to go out in these competition rings with stuff going on all around them, and their foundational needs aren't met. They don't have a foundation themselves. They probably aren't schooled correctly biomechanically, which is going to trigger a whole lot of things in their brain and their body. And I just had a clinic I ran a few weeks ago where we were working on those foundational skills, and we talked about, the basic needs of the horse, friends, forge, freedom, and then what are the foundational skills they need. And I'll be honest, I was even shocked because by the time we went out and we did the scary obstacles, I didn't have a single spook from any horse. And I was like, maybe this is a little disappointing for people. But, but that's the point, right? Like by the time we get there, they should be so regulated because they have worked through their bodies. They've let the tension go. So now when a horse feels balanced, they're safe because if a predator comes, they can get away in whatever direction they need to go at whatever speed they need to go. So now they feel safe. They feel safe in the person's presence because the person is helping them get to that state, observing and adapting to what the horse is telling them. And so now you go out into a new, difficult situation, and the horse is like, all right, cool, I got it. And it doesn't need to be drama. And we're perpetuating this drama by all these TikToks and things of horses exploding and, oh, I fell off, how funny. And why is that the norm? We do fall,
Right.
right? Like, yeah, we're going to have a fall on occasion. I'm going to knock on wood. I haven't fallen off in a year and a half, and I ride a whole heck of a lot of horses and, green horses and problem horses. But it's because I won't push them past where they're capable of. We've got to find that learning threshold of, I'm going to push you a little bit, and we're going to go into that state of sympathetic arousal, which is so important for learning. And we are being told now that there should not be any stress, any sympathetic nervous system involvement. That's all wrong. Read Dr. Peters' stuff. There has to be an engagement of that for learning, but it has to be balanced with the parasympathetic. So we've got to find that target zone of, can we push you a little bit outside your comfort zone, but still be able to down regulate and come back into your comfort zone? And where's that flexibility of, coming up and down within that?
Yes. So important. As Karen Rolfe she still says this, but would always say to us in our clinics was, everything comes from and returns to relaxation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
And yeah, if you can get the things in a relaxed state, then you can actually create the energy or whatever you need if you need it to do something more. Let's say if you're talking about dressage, like collected work, right? But then you can bring the horse right back down to that regulated state. And a lot of that is not taught.
Mhm.
So how do you help riders shift from that feeling of making the horse do something to creating a conversation?
Okay, so this is where my rider biomechanics stuff is the geek in me is gonna come out. So, um, so there's very different camps when it comes to rider biomechanics. And I am in the embodied rider biomechanics camp, which is based on the Franklin method of movement. And it's about working with your body, not forcing it. And so building that foundation from the ground is usually where I start. Most people carry so many patterns of tension in their bodies that they don't recognize. And so when we get on the horse and we try to do something, we're already fighting those ingrained patterns. So we've got to work through that first. So that's kind of my step one, is just in our basic movement, walking around, squatting, carrying buckets, where do we feel those tensions come up? And can we do those things in a more easy state with more efficacy to it? So we don't, again, have to white knuckle it. So that's kind of my step one, is people need to be working outside of the saddle in order to be able to work well in the saddle. And how easy is it for us to just notice throughout our day? I feel like I'm stepping more on my left foot than my right. Or, oh, hey, I'm starting to have pain in this area of my body. I wonder what's going on. Let me explore that a little bit. And so building the ability to notice those things, again, coming back to observation, has to be step one. So through the Train Your Seat program, we talk a lot about epic. And so that is experiencing how our body feels today. And I really like the word today in that, because we all come with what we have been told. Oh, you're crooked this way. Oh, you have that. And it's part of who we are. It becomes our identity. Oh, I'm always this, I'm always that. Well, are you today? Is that what you feel today? Did somebody tell you that, or is that what you feel, right?
Right.
So feeling it first, experiencing it first, then making a plan. Okay, so I feel this. Let's try this to see if it gets better. Implement that plan, and then compare to what you felt at the beginning. And so, okay, that felt better. It didn't feel better. And I am huge on, you need to feel empowered to say, hey, that didn't work, or no, that did nothing, or no, I don't feel that in the ring, because I can't help you if I don't know that that's what's going on in your body, and I'm not in your body. So please tell me if it's not helping you, right? Um,
Right.
and then we can go back and we can make a new plan and we can implement something, try something different and compare. And so building that throughout the day. So we learn that for our riding, but now go try it when you're walking around during your day is really that step one. And people will come back and go, hey, I realized that, I'm clenching as I'm walking around, and I tried to let that go and I feel better. And then they get in the saddle and they go, oh, I can follow with my seat today. And so it's really not a horse specific thing. It's really a daily living thing. And I see so much improvement in people's comfort the other, 23 hours a day they're not riding when we come at it from that approach. And ultimately, what I tell people is we want this to be easy. We want this to be easy for the horse, because if it's easy for the horse, they feel like they still have the energy they need should an emergency arise. So they're not going to start building up tension and fear. But then for ourselves, when it stops being easy, that's where tension comes for us. So reframing the brain to very positive approaches. Okay, so let's say someone comes and says, my left hip is sticky. It never does what I want it to do. Okay. Well, let's feel it today. Let's experience it today. Walk around, tap, whatever it is. What do you notice today? Well, actually, maybe it's actually my right hip that feels off today. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, we can influence that one specifically, or we can influence them both. Do we need to go to imagery? Let's oil the joints. Can we imagine, and this is where the pelvis models and biomechanic, anatomic pieces come in that I'll teach as well. But can we imagine that the hip joint moving through the socket is oiled? All right, let's really imagine that. Let's move in all these different range of motions. What do you notice? And I would say 9.5 times out of 10, imagery like that, and it needs to be tailored to that person, because maybe they don't work with that specific image, but we can try different things. But imagery, positive words will make all the difference in the world for that movement specifically, but then allow for a cascade of tension release throughout the body. And so when we start with that and then we go to aids in the saddle, then we have a foundation of ease and a foundation of working with instead of working against. Most people think we're working contra to all of the things that are trying to mess us up in our body or, doing us in. And no, how do we work with it? How do we work with what we have? And a perfect example of this, when I went up to Canada for our spine in-person component, we were lucky enough to play around on a simulator. And at the end of the day, I said, I would really like to play around with some lateral work. And I know the simulator doesn't move in that way, but could we still try to play with some things? And so we did. And I said, okay, well, how about some shoulder in? Can we work on some shoulder in? So one of the anatomic pieces of the puzzle that we had talked about that week is how the thoracic and the lumbar facet joints move. And they move
Mm-hmm.
in different angles. And in riding, we hear all the time, move your belly button where you want your horse to go. Well, our lumbar doesn't actually really do that. And I know that, there are different stacked points that do different things. But when we think about my belly button's not in my pelvis, it's in the lumbar region. And so then I'm trying to force, okay, well, in the shoulder in, am I taking my belly button out? What am I doing here? And we talked about just allowing that thoracic segment of the body to turn and just allowing the lumbar so it's a relative counter rotation, but to semi counter rotate to the outside. And like a mason jar being our lumbar and the lid being our thoracic, just having this slight oiled twist the cap onto the mason jar, my shoulder ins are easy now. Whereas before, I felt like I was taking that inside seat bone and really trying to drive the forward and then forcing the upper body, the shoulder, the rein more to the inside. And it was this jam the left seat bone and then kind of force the right shoulder around that left inside hind leg. Whereas now it's let it flow, open the outside of the right body, and then allow that rotation to happen the way that your body naturally moves. And so that's where I think that the backgrounds like what you have in, sports medicine and things are so crucial when we are coaching. And there's not a strong foundation of that in our industry. We really need to have coaches, instructors that are learning anatomy, horse and rider, learning functional movement, and understanding, because like you said at the beginning, if we teach poor foundations and these riders are escalated up the levels, they are going to hit a wall, they are going to get hurt, they have to come back to basics. And how frustrating is that for everybody? And what horses get hurt in the process, what people get hurt in the process. And then you lose. How many people have you talked to where they're like, I've just lost my joy for it, I just don't even know if I want to do it anymore? It happens
Oh
all the
yeah. Yeah, they've lost their joy or their bodies are so battered
time.
that they can't do it, or it's painful, it's hard. And I love that visual of the shoulder in because there's so many things that even while I'm teaching people that I still say that I'm like, I don't like this, but I don't know what, like, we don't have better language. Like, there's so many things that I wish we had better language for. But I love the visual of being able to sort of twist the lid on a mason jar. That's fantastic. And I think doing things, like this or like the instructor continuing education that you do through your nonprofit, that is so helpful in getting us to a place where we can work together, we can collaborate and make positive impact. So I want to get to that, but I also want to ask you before we do that, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how riders approach training their horses, what would it be?
That's a great question. Observation is the foundation of everything. And I think it would be understanding that training your horse is a two-way conversation.
Yes. That, I love that. And of course, observation is the basis of everything. I believe the same thing. So give me, and I'm going to put you on the spot here because I didn't tell you I was going to do this beforehand, but give me one simple experiment, awareness practice, something that the listeners can try this week to improve their connection with their horse.
Okay. So I have on my platform, I actually have a longer video about this, but I have 4 foundational skills that I teach all of my students, that I think are really then easy to combine for almost anything that you need to do with your horse. And so that's from the ground that you start that, and then you can apply it in the saddle, and there's a couple extra things in the saddle. But can your horse walk on without you tugging on the lead rope, just using your body language? And so for me, I install pre-cues on my horse. So, hey, I'm about to ask you to do something is pre-cue. And so for my walk on, I kind of imagine that I have bubbling coming up through my body. So, we think a lot, we hear stand tall, sit tall, whatever. But can you just kind of like imagine bubbles coming up, and that brings your energy up and then also helps a soft increase in your posture. And then bring your hand forward with a long loopy lead rope So you're not actually tugging on that halter, but your horse can see the change in your hand posture and then walk on. And what does your horse do? Do they follow or do you hit the end of the lead rope? And so from there, you can start building in those pre-cues of like, hey, these couple of things mean we're about to walk on. And then your horse is going to start watching you and going, oh, okay. And then I don't get tugged on. So I don't mind this anymore. I do want to go with you now because we're going together instead of being pulled around. So that's the very first foundational skill. But then the other three are backing up off of your body energy. And again, that doesn't have to be this violent thing. It can be one step at a time, but it's a similar thing. You have to angle your horse appropriately or angle your body to your horse appropriately. But can you bubble up? Can you kind of shift forward onto your toes and ask your horse to shift back? Can your horse go sideways? Can your horse go in a circle around you like you're lunging? So those are my 4 foundational things. And the last 2 are a little bit more challenging and require a little bit more understanding of how the horse's body moves and how you influence the specific areas of the horse. I talk about, front end, middle, and hind end. But those first 2 are really fun to play around with and really simple. And you can install whatever pre-cues that you want with your horse. Those have worked really well for me, the bubbling up tall. And then when I ask my horse to halt, I'm not pulling back on the lead rope. My hand is coming back to a more neutral posture. And I'm sinking into my feet and, kind of bubbling down or a wave washing down and out the bottom. And so you can play around with that is, okay, can my horse walk on and stop with me without us getting in a tugging match?
Yes, I love that. And I love the pre-cues. I'm all about people learning what actual aids they use and developing a language for them, whether it's phases of the aids is what I typically use, but pre-cues, whatever, and you want your horse to go off that first pre-cue. That's your goal. That's your refinement of your aids. So I like that. And I think people should definitely give that a try. I like the bubbling up analogy too. That's really good. So now I know that you have your nonprofit, which does education for instructors, and that is called North Star Stables Nova. And it also does therapeutic and adaptive riding too, right?
Yeah, so now it was initially formed for that. I realized in my years of wisdom that it was better to have all operations under an LLC that was very much an equine welfare focused change. And have now everything's being operated under the LLC. And then North Star provides financial aid for riders to go take that and do therapeutic riding at qualified centers.
Cool. That is an amazing opportunity. And I have actually been to one of your instructor clinics at your farm. And if you are a fellow trainer listening to this, you should definitely check one of those out at some point. So before we go, Teresa, tell me a little bit about your regular programs, like your everyday equestrian, and where people can find you. And then I will, of course, link all of that in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I am in Hume, Virginia, Fauquier County, and I do have a membership lesson program. What that entails is however many lessons that you want to take a week, and then also that everyday equestrian learning platform. And so we are really, really focused on building from the ground up. So that's human and horse biomechanics on the ground, individualized instruction for the rider, and building that partnership. The Everyday Equestrian platform started as something for my own clients, so that when I said, like, hey, go read this book or go learn this, that's a big ask of people to go do those things and a big time commitment and sometimes daunting. Like, oh, hey, why don't you go read Warwick Schiller's book or, go pick up the centered writing books or whatever. People don't want to do that. That's a lot. So, everyday equestrian is an accessible way to make small wins in between your rides. So, it's a video library with a lot of things that I know I didn't hear myself until I was an adult and dug deeper and had a lot more independent study. So there are things about the rain aids, the three main rain aids. There's more than three, but the ones that you'll probably need and use the most. What are the effects on the horses and how do we use them? The feel of the seat in three planes of motion. So what our three planes of motion are, our range of motion, how we can use those for the aids. There are lots of training videos. There's some groundwork videos so that we can improve our communication with our horse. There are unmounted exercises to improve our own range of motion. So a lot of resources to help fill in those gaps. One of the biggest things in our industry is we know this is a very expensive sport and it's very hard to make progress when you're only riding 1 day a week. So what is the solution? Well, most people are going to say ride more, which is not financially viable for most people or might be too much of a time commitment. But this can fill in that gap because you can work on your own motion in between to make improvements when you get back in the saddle, but then also work on your mental state and your understanding of training. So everyday equestrian is now open to the general public. I think it's $10 a month. It's something pretty inexpensive. So I know for the year, if it's $120, that's like one lesson that I would take. So I think it's a pretty good bang for your buck. I also do online learning through that. So we have one live webinar a month on a different topic than what's in the platform, and then also open office hours. So if people have a question, they're like, hey, this month I'm really struggling with this with my horse. Well, I've got, an hour on the calendar that we meet over Zoom, and I can answer those questions and help people. So I'm trying to help with affordable ways to continue people's education and progress. So outside of that, we do offer lots of clinics here, some geared toward professionals and some geared toward amateurs, some kid oriented too, that are really to fill those holes, answer those questions that people have of, oh, I'm really struggling with this, to build those foundations so that people can go home and apply. I want it to be easily understandable, easily accessible, easily applicable, because you don't need your instructor there every single time that you ride. Once you get to a certain level, I hope that you can be independent. And if you're working with somebody that tells you you shouldn't be riding outside your lessons with them, you might need to take a hard look at that and say, well, is there a reason? Is there a safety reason for myself or the horse? And if there is, okay, I'll understand that and we'll keep working toward our goal of independence. But if there's not, it might be time to make a change because, again, where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I think that's a red flag. And if there is a safety concern, then are they helping me get past that safety concern, right? And I really think I love that I'm seeing more communities pop up like yours and mine because I think those are so helpful. I have belonged to some great ones, and we really, I think because we think of equestrian sports as an individual endeavor,
Yeah.
right? That we forget how important community and how much you can actually learn because one thing, you're probably going to have fun when you're in the right community, you're in the right group of people, and that's going to open you up for learning. Plus, when you have a question or you're like stuck, if you know there's somewhere you can go and say, oh, God, like for your rain aids example, if one day you're having a hard time, your horse is not responding, or then you let me go back and watch this video again
Mhm.
and see maybe something went wrong and I missed it or whatever. And then, oh, I can jump in here and I can ask a question. as people who grew up in the just come for your lessons and, that's it. You've got your 45 minutes or your, 2-hour group lesson or whatever it is, and that's it. You don't get any more than that. Communities are so helpful, and you can learn so much from being in with a group of people who are also sharing your same struggle, because everybody is. We've all been there and we know what it's like. So I love that you are offering that. And like I said, I'll link everything up in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here with me this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, horse fiends, thanks for hanging out with us today. If this episode got your gears turning, don't forget to check out Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart. The links are in the show notes. It's the program that'll take everything we talked about here and actually help you apply it in real life with your horse. And hey, before you ride off, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review of the show. It helps more riders like you find us and keep these conversations going. All the links you need are waiting in the show notes. Happy riding!